So now we're
All right, it is 8:30. We'll call the September 21st, 2023 EDA meeting to order. I'd be looking for approval of the September 21st agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second.
Is that you, Henry?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Again opposed? I'll also be looking for approval of the August 17th meeting minutes that were provided in your packet.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to the Elk River Economic Development Update.
All right, thank you all for having Josh and I today. We're gonna just highlight 7 or 8 projects that we've got going on and a couple other activities and some things we're looking forward to in the future. For those that don't know us, Brent O'Neill, I'm the Economic Development Director at the city.
And Josh Mullen, Economic Development Specialist.
So we're gonna start just a couple high-level building permit numbers I wanted to share with you. One, in 2022, our commercial industrial investments through the building permit valuation was 67 million. Through the midpoint, or actually just a little bit into July, is our last data point. We're at 27,500,000. So we're just a little bit behind the pace of what 22 was, but still pretty strong, given that we had some strong projects in 22 and the perception, at least out there, that there's some softening in the overall economy. The other number I wanted to share that's a little more interesting is early in the year, our home building permits were unreasonably low. We typically do 110 to 140 per year in Elk River of new single-family homes. And as of April, we were at basically a handful of permits, so a really, really slow pace. And then we had some skyrocketing since then, so that kind of with the for sale market as well as the new construction market, that took off again in late spring and early summer. So we're now roughly around 50 single-family homes. Again, well off the pace of that 110, but there was some good rebound from what looked like a really terrible start to the year in terms of home building activity.
quick question on that. Is it scattered throughout the city, or are there specific areas that are being developed?
That's a great question, and it's probably more in between. We've got some like final phases of Amiski Meadows, which is out by the Fire Station 3 and Twin Lakes Elementary.
Oh, yeah, yep.
And then a couple developers had owned lots that were just, putting those online as well, like Manziger.
There's that cluster there by the roundabout by Smith and Twin Lakes Road.
Yeah, out just north of Walmart a little bit there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be one again that our developer built. And then of course there's the handful of those that are just people who've owned land or bought land and want to do a custom property. But yeah, it's definitely off from the time where we have Horton doing 50 a year or something like that.
Brent, what do you have available for platted lots?
I don't have that number. What I can tell you is we're just bringing online, and I didn't include that in here, but what's called a Bradford Estates, which is a development that Lennar is doing just south of the area we're referencing here. Big picture, that's going to be 500 or so lots. They've just gone through some entitlement processes with the city that's going to look at the first 350 or so of those coming online.
Is that all single family?
Yes. There has been some talk about some efficiency lots that might include some twin homes or might include more of those more recent style you see where a lot of the house is built either over the garage or behind the garage. So they're trying to make maximum use of tighter lot lines. And I don't recall the specific number, but I believe about 20 of those are raring to go very quickly as kind of an initial fast phase part of that development.
One other question on housing, and I've seen several apartment buildings that are in the final phases, so there's the one that was the old, on Highway 10, the old dealership, that one,
Saxon.
that's coming online.
Yeah.
And there's the one on Twin Lakes. I haven't seen any movement on the apartment buildings on phase 2 for the one south of School Street.
Yeah, on Jackson, off of Jackson
School Street,
Avenue.
yeah, I can't remember, what's the name of that developer?
Pat Briggs.
Pat Briggs.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, so he got that approved like in January.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any movement on that yet.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one, and I've actually got a couple images of those other two that are underway. But I'll maybe just say that Pat Briggs had done a 48-unit apartment on Jackson, right next to Lions Park, and then he owns the property to the north of that, and he had planned to do 3 additional apartments there, very similar size. It's an extremely challenging lot from soil condition standpoint. It's very peaty. It's got a water table that's about 2 feet from the current grade line. So he's gonna have to do both, pulling out that bad soil and filling, and then he'll actually have to raise the site another 2 feet or so to get to some grade line that he needs to deal with that water. That's in excess of $1 million just in soil work, to do that. He applied for TIF through the city. The city entertained it at first, but ultimately got uncomfortable with how it was coming together. So that is, the best way to say it probably is that it's on hold and unlikely to have TIF support going forward. Right. He's continuing to work on his other plating and other activities with the city, as well as trying to find out financially how he can make it work, or if there are other programs out there, perhaps state or federal, that could help offset and get that project off the ground.
Okay.
And then I believe, did you reference one other one that maybe has not got off the ground?
No, that was the only big one that I knew hadn't gone in. All of the apartment complexes that are going in, those are all designed to be a market rate. Is that correct?
They are, I'm sorry, no, the trellis one, I'm gonna get to that picture in a second.
That's
here
fine.
and kind of
Yeah,
explain
I
that.
don't want
Oh, sure. I'm gonna actually start with one that the county and the EDA were involved with here, which is the Beaudry. The Beaudry Lubricants Building. This is out on County Highway 1. The Beaudry companies, who primarily deal in fuel and fuel distribution, also want to add a stronger lubricants arm to what they do. So they're going to build a 20,000-foot building out on County 1. There's a map showing you kind of how and where it sits on their site. This was also a very challenging site that both the county and the city did tax abatement for. He had to fill in some wetland, so there's some cost in that, as well as purchase some wetland credits to offset the wetland that was displaced there. But it'll end up with a 20,000-foot building, roughly about a $4 million investment to get this thing off the ground. So that picture doesn't show it real well, but that was yesterday, the status of the project. So they've gotten most of their earthwork done there and have now gotten some foundation and footings poured. So I would expect that building to come out of the ground really quickly now. This was kind of a fun one. This is the third McDonald's I'm aware of that has done what they did here. They took advantage of Highway 169, being closed. But some of the more aged McDonald's facilities, McDonald's will go in, shut them down completely, tear them down and rebuild them, and they'll do all of that in about a 3 or 4 month period. Just an incredibly efficient process. So out on Dodge, next to 169, I believe it was just last week, McDonald's reopened here, much more digital focused, everything's new, cleaner. They've made some changes as the market has changed, so the drive-through is gonna be way more efficient as far as moving traffic through. Trellis, this is the one on Twin Lakes that we were just talking about. This is one that did come through the city about 4 years ago to look at TIF that was declined. And they also had some state funding opportunities. Well, that state funding came through last year, so they went forward with the project here. This is a little geared towards families. This one is an income component to this one. It is not Section 8, but there are gonna be income limits as well as rent, income-based rent for these apartments. This is a first of 2 buildings. It's 55 units. And then building 2 will also be 55 units. I intended to bring some sort of map, just to orient you with some of these, and I apologize for not doing that. But this, to give you just a little bit of orientation on this, so they'll be south of the Spectrum School area by about half a mile, and then across Twin Lakes from that side of the road. The next one, another apartment project. This is the one that was the old Saxon site. The top picture there shows both buildings now out of the ground. These gonna be over 150 units between the 2 buildings. The building on the bottom picture here is the building on the right, and is pretty much at the completion point where they can start their full lease up. The building on the left, or building above this, is just a little bit behind in terms of their schedule, and that was staged on purpose. They were, as they brought different crews through the project, whoever got done with building 1 would move over to building 2, and then the next crew would come into building 1, and their intention was to stage it that way so they could get both projects done in that regard. This was a TIF project of the city, and a pretty sizable one to really clear out that old Saxon property and then get this, really, I think it's the largest apartment projects the city's ever done at 150 units plus.
Did you say that was market rate?
Yes.
Except for the TIF component that requires the
The
subsidized until the TIF loan is satisfied?
Yeah, there's a portion of them, I believe it's like 32 units have to have.
Is it based on the size of the project?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the project, yep.
And how long was the TIF for?
This TIF was 20 years.
1 year.
Yeah. It typically, the policy has been 15 years. Statutorily, you can go up to 26. And based on the request and the evaluation and kind of the necessity of getting that Saxon property cleaned up once and for all, that was the motivation to accept the 20-year. Cornerstone, this is kind of a project that happened largely without much involvement from the city other than the approval process, but a nice little quick lane facility that they got there. And I say little, that's really not little when you compare it to other quick lane facilities out there. So a nice facility there. They're also integrating in this area fast electric vehicle chargers. So this will be one kind of destination point for those that have those type of vehicles and need a charger in the area.
Where's this one?
This is on 171st. It's part of the Ford Cornerstone property. Okay, yep. I wanted to mention this one, and I got to thank Jessica for scheduling a tour out here. This is the old GRE sorting facility on 165th and Highway 10. I actually debated whether to crop this photo or not, and I intentionally did not, because I wanted to highlight how much land is available with this property as well. Almost 40 acres is on the property where this building sits. The building itself is 130,000 square feet, and a gentleman named Doug Millark bought it a couple years ago after it closed. Saw an opportunity to make a conversion of some sort on it. So he's been spending both time and resources cleaning it up. But it's an incredibly unique building. Again, 130,000 square feet. It's got 2 separate areas of over 50,000 that are columnless. One in particular, I believe it's about a 50-foot sidewall height. So there's just, for some really niche uses statewide, this will be a building that we can really go after some of those projects that don't want to build and can't find a building with some of the crazy specs that sometimes come in with some of these projects. So that's one I'm really excited about. Again, we'll kind of,
40 acres, is some of it dividable?
yeah, and actually, the piece in the foreground here, that's about 7 acres, very much separated from kind of the functionality of the rest of the property. So I could see this part in the front here being part that gets sold off, but there's certainly more that could be sold off as well. And then I'm gonna just highlight a couple other things really quickly. Mill City Paper, used to be Patriot. They went through a private equity acquisition and then a disposition, so the original owners have reacquired it, renamed it Mill City Paper. They've also started going through a downsizing process here. This one is also, this one is also out near the city's first, or it's in the city's first industrial park out on County 1, about 150,000 square foot building. So they freed up quite a bit of space as part of their downsizing. They just secured a lease with a group called Building Products. They're out of South Dakota. They have several locations in the Midwest. This will be their first in Minnesota. So they're gonna take 50,000 square feet in this building, and then they have plans to actually do up to 80,000 feet of outdoor storage there, and they'll be a distributor in this area. They manufacture some things in South Dakota, but this will be a distribution facility out of Elk River that'll be in that area, and they'll probably end up between their downsizing and this one net even or better on the job front as part of that as well. So this actually worked out pretty well to have Mill City not necessarily have to do a layoff, but to do some coordination to even shift some positions over to another part of the building and a different type of work. Another project, I'm not sure how much it's got discussed here, but Jessica was very involved in this one. Kind of a fun one that I know a lot of folks in the community are looking forward to is Avery's Adventures. It's an indoor playground. It'll be next to Ashley Furniture out on Freeport. And this is one, there's I think 2 at least in Maple Grove of different, same model, but different owners, different name, where you use key card access on a pay model to go in for an hour or 2 with your kids. And there's just an indoor playground that they can have fun at. So it's a kind of a low staff model. Next to Ashley Furniture.
Where
So
the old
just
Target used to be?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I believe they went through your business lab as well. Is that correct? Yes.
They did, yep.
New Fab's another fun one. This is in the building just to the south of Home Depot. They kind of came into town off the radar, started really small as a precision welder. And what they do primarily is weld tubing products together. The primary customer for them is dairy. It helps move milk around, whether it's a home dairy or a dairy facility, a cheese facility, et cetera. So they've got some really fancy looking, I should have gotten a picture of that while we were there. But they've since grown to about 20 employees. They're using 17,000 feet in that building now. And they've got plans to continue growing. So that's one we're looking forward to continue working with them on. Project New Hampton is a facility in Iowa that has been looking for a satellite location in Minnesota. They do kind of small manufacturing and assembly. They have 6 to 10 jobs, and we're told, and I think we'll get there within a few days, but told that they are at a handshake deal on a lease here in Elk River. So that's for 10,000 feet, again, 6 to 10 jobs in this area. Tech Centers is the name that this group has given themselves. They've built a few, they're not terribly big, they're small bay manufacturing and flex spaces. What they do with those, they have 1,500 square feet per bay. It's got a garage door and an entrance door and a bathroom, and then it's just a blank slate. And it's really, they don't call it an incubator, and they don't really refer to it as graduating from the garage. But that's kind of how I see it a little bit. It's these spaces that can be available for those folks that just aren't ready to go build a 10,000-foot building or even lease 5 or 10,000 feet, but they just need, you know, some space to do some small manufacturing. It's likely that some folks like contractors, plumbing contractors might just use that as a small facility to help them, again, have a small space that they can work. They originally talked to us about the space next to the liquor store, and the city has not been real strong on that particular site, you know, going to uses that aren't really in that kind of that highest highway image of your community type space. So we were trying to find another space for them in the community.
In regards
Yes.
to that, are those lease bays or are those purchase bays?
Those are lease bays, yes. Another unique thing about them, it's kind of neither here nor there, but they don't focus on a retail component at all. So they say, and I kind of say that with hesitation, that they don't need a lot of parking. So one of their requests would be a substantial parking reduction from the code. I mean, to the tune of 80% reduction. So that would be something we'll have to get work with on them as well if they come forward. But at this point, we're still trying to help them find a site that kind of fits better in the community.
Would the site that we have next to the government center work at all?
Your 7 acres?
Yeah.
Let me send you the image and you can see what
If you don't know, we have 8 acres that's being listed to the west of the government center, and then we have about 27 behind us that it could be industrial as well. So I don't know that we've ever brought that up here, but we do have some land available, and that might be a good fit.
Access to early
Right. Perfect. Another one that this has just kind of been off in the background, but I think it's worth mentioning is Orlick Industries, which is just up the road here at the corner of Joplin and Business Center Drive. Went through some hardship in the COVID years in particular, and they had quite a bit of job loss. They were going through an unwinding process of assets being foreclosed on and so forth, and they ended up working with an entity who infused some capital as part of trying to help them unwind, and ultimately decided not to unwind the business. So a group came in, they are now known as Twin City Metalworks, but helped buy some of the assets of Orluck and really position them for strength. So that stopped the bleeding, so to speak, on some things they were going through. They've got some better contracts now. They're primarily in defense, so it's government contracts are a big part of what they do. But they've stabilized and now have some plans to grow again. One thing that they might be looking at is outsourcing some of their manufacturing, which would be a detriment for our community, but at the same time growing their R&D and their engineering. So we could end up seeing some additional growth here and more of the design and planning part of their business. My last slide, I'm gonna just kind of take a little bit of a forward look of some things that are priorities or things that we're looking forward to in the community. Ever since KFC left, that's left a void, and whether it's people's voices or the bulletin boards that exist on social media, we do hear about that quite a bit. So that is one that we're working on, both KFC, but the other big names in chicken. Felt weird to say that, big names in chicken. But Raising Cane's, Chick-fil-A, Popeyes, etc., all have an expressed interest in coming to Elk River. So we're really trying to figure out how we can best support that. Location is such a critical part for them. And pretty uniformly, we hear 169, and you've got kind of a narrow mile or two band of 169 where they will want to go. And in a good way, but also difficulty here. I mean, it's built out. And to find that piece of property that fits for them is a challenge. We're going to continue to work on that.
I have a question. Todd and I were just joking about any place close to a school. with the chicken.
I know,
Chicken
I
fingers.
know, especially the high school.
Yeah. And what about in the comp plan, they did kind of a, when they did their comp plan, they tried to open up more space in the parking lots. Is that ever an opportunity for something like that, or do they need more acreage?
Definitely, I think, no, I mean, there's one, the Ashley
That's
Furniture parking lot is one in particular,
And
and
Arby's is kind of carved out like that.
yeah, Arby's is carved out right there. What we had heard, on good authority, is that KFC, was going to go in and out lot there. And this is kind of a ironic story that, this entity would only do a land lease, to KFC. And KFC couldn't justify putting $1 million or $2 million building on property they didn't own. Interestingly though, we talked to a different chicken restaurant who says we only want to do land leases, but we don't like that location. So it is trying to find these criteria that matter to these companies and then make it work. But I definitely think some outlot stuff. I think another one we talked about is Walmart. And it's, well, Walmart's kind of an unusual configuration because of how the ponds and the streets flow there. But I've referred to it as Easter Sunday planning. Zach, our planner, refers to it as Black Friday planning. But how much parking do you build for, your worst day versus you just try to provide adequate parking for like 95% of your days, and you deal with those bad days as they come in, and that would free up potentially even a Walmart.
I thought it was neat when the River Comp Plan took that initiative to say, hey, we have these huge parking lots that are essentially empty, 90% of the time to 95% of the time. Let's utilize that space. I think it's a good,
Yeah,
perspective.
and you're right with the comp plan, we've not correspondingly made that change in our zoning yet. And I don't know what the approach will be there, if it's a blanket change to zoning or more of a case by case that can be justified through reductions.
Well, I've also heard Mayor Dietz and the city council talk about the redevelopment of Main Street between 169 and 10.
Yeah.
That they sort of view that as that's going to become basically all commercial. I mean, it's technically commercial now, but it's commercial and residential buildings.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. The connection point between Highway 10 and 169 along Main and then into downtown or connecting further east to Walmart is a nice corridor now that we expect with 169 being reconfigured at Main Street. We'll actually get more traffic. There's about 12,000 cars per day now. And so there's going to be a focus on not only taking advantage of that extra traffic, but maybe designing and thinking about a better future for what that corridor looks like in terms of the road itself, as well as how we handle the land uses alongside of it. So we're talking now about, do we get those power lines buried there? Do we, design the street in a more pleasant to the eye sort of look? Do we encourage more redevelopment there?
The other piece is on Highway 10, west of the, I can't remember what the greenery.
Yeah, like Spikes.
Yeah, west of Spikes.
Yeah.
There's that old strip mall that's there. Has there been any talk on redeveloping that at all?
There hasn't been, I think a few.
You have to have a willing owner.
Yeah,
and I think that's the issue, isn't it? The owner there?
yeah. Well, and I think, in the list of things that we're working on, that hasn't risen to the level of some others. I think one thing that does, maybe in the back of our minds, always weigh is the proximity of the railroad.
Yeah.
And how appealing that is for a future developer.
Yeah.
To do something there or not. But one thing we are talking more and more about, kind of on that note, as well as the railroad itself, is any sort of beautification that can be done, whether it's simply a better management of weed control there or not, just to make that whole area look a little better.
Has the owner of the movie theater thought about putting pickleball inside pickleball courts and?
Yeah.
Such in that large space?
Yeah, no, that's a good one that you brought up. I debated whether to put that on here or not. We're told that probably within a handful of days, that property would change ownership. And that again, a lot of this has been confidential to me, so we're kind of, I don't even know some of the details. But that the entity that is buying it would buy it with the intention of doing a commercial conversion. So they would continue to be a commercial use there, whether they do small bays or something else, or do something that has a kind of a commercial recreation type component.
That's good to hear. I'm sure you guys are happy that that's a large space to sit empty for any length of time.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I mean, we're a little cautious about not knowing the details of what'll exactly happen, but it is kind of exciting to hear that. I mean, and I gather there was more than one interested party as well, so.
That's a great location.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That would be neat to get like an indoor recreation
Mm-hmm.
type facility, because there's a huge need. I know like any sports that want to, kids that want to practice outside of their season, they're driving all over the place to get indoor practice. That would be neat.
Yeah.
Cross our fingers.
Cross your fingers.
Yes.
A big priority for the city, and this is similar to the data center site, and we kind of co-market them together when we're doing large site marketing, but our Nature's Edge 3 site is a site that we acquired through the swap with Cargill. Cargill gave us the land, and we extended water and sewer through that property to their research facility. We have 21 acres there. It's pre-graded, so it's pretty flat. It's got about 85% of the anticipated ponding requirement also graded in. So this is one that we're gonna be, as a city, I think, very protective of this property as well. Not just selling it because we get a full offer price, but really thinking about the jobs and the impact that a site like this can have on the community. On a similar note, we don't have a lot of inventory in the long run. The county's 28-acre site is a wonderful site. Our large site there, those are the two biggest sites that we have in Elk River that are really on the market today. So a future initiative is going to be looking at additional properties. The gravel pits often get mentioned, some additional growth areas along 10 and 169 in East Elk River would be a couple. So we'll continue to think more about that. The city owns 120, I should be very careful. The city wastewater fund owns 120 acres where they used to dump the sludge and the solid product that would come off the treatment facility. We no longer need it for that use. This would actually be kind of the intersection of Jarvis and 165th. So think of the GRE facility that we just showed, just go straight east, right on the county line with Anoka County there. That one will be interesting as we think about how that could come online, because that would require a water and sewer extension. It would require the wastewater fund to be willing to sell it and so forth. So that'll be a future initiative that we look at. Hotel is going to be a bigger and bigger driver, adding a second hotel to Elk River. Again, the $1 million question is the property that it can go on and where that's a good fit in the community. But we do have quite a bit of interest. So we're thinking about doing a little bit more proactive work as far as maybe a preemptive market study or some sort of document that can help sell our story a little bit more. Interestingly, the Cargill expansion, as part of that, they anticipated 2,000 room nights generated per year from that facility from folks coming in and out of town to do research, visit, all those things. And I don't know if you know where they're staying or not, but we'd love to have them stay here.
Yeah, a lot of times just across the river at Seago.
Sure, at the old, it's been about the fourth name now.
Wyndham.
Wyndham, yeah. The last two, Commissioner Halsey alluded to a little bit about our downtown planning extension of Main Street. The city is starting to do a capital planning project for reconstruction on Main Street in downtown itself, probably in 2026. So we'll be looking at that and how all those property owners are affected and the amenities that we want to have downtown, and then getting into kind of a broader, bigger picture impact of downtown and surrounding properties. How do we want to look at the Main Street extension? How do we want to look at the properties along the railroad? How do we want to look at the connections, you know, across 10 and across the railroad? So that is a process we'll probably undertake sometime in 2024.
I'm assuming that also includes the looking at the, street configuration of when you try to come off of, the bridge area.
Yes.
Talking about Parrish.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
That's a challenge.
It's absolutely a challenge. That will get evaluated. That's probably just, for this phase in 2 years, that's probably right on the edge of where our project would start. But one thing that we want to consider and coordinate with MnDOT on is how that functions after 169 is complete. And if we see some traffic pattern shifts, then we can have a better understanding of how that intersection will truly function in the long term, and whether or not there's a need to do a small modification or a big modification, because that is absolutely a challenging intersection. You know,
There's not much room there.
yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot to put a roundabout because of the limits of the highway and the bridge, and but someone could probably make a lot of money with the right design for that one, because it's it's a challenging one.
Are you guys aware about, so I've heard rumors from Anoka County that MnDOT wants to put a stoplight in at Jarvis and 10.
Yeah, so MnDOT, I'm a little bit out of school here, so I'll do the best I can, but long-term, I think the full vision is that there will be 0 stoplights between Anoka or further, and, you know, we get the Zimmerman one done even past that point. So MnDOT is looking at some interim solutions until they can do the full investment of the overpasses. And they've been exploring things from stoplights to, some people call them R-cuts. I've heard them called J-turns, those types of things. So I don't know that anything is solidified, but I would anticipate that this is kind of ironic, as the stoplights go out in Ramsey.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up is, some commissioners at Anoka County have been pretty adamant that we need to really push MnDOT to move that. But talking to like Jim Wagner, it's not really our highest priority. And I know from a county perspective, we've got higher priorities between finding another bridge location.
Yes.
And the County Road 4 project. So as long as we're aligned, you know, that it's not anybody's highest priority over here, we can let Anoka rant.
And there's also the County Road 11 and Highway 10.
Yeah.
Interchange that we're hoping to get accomplished, and then Becker wants County Road, or Highway 25 and County Road.
Yeah.
Or Highway 10 and Highway 25.
Yeah.
On the west side.
Is it push on Jarvis Street in part because of the expansion with furniture and things and plants and things? Is that driving it at all?
No, what it is that there's truck traffic coming from the north, and the concern is a significant portion of that truck traffic turns east, and so they're cutting across the westbound lane.
Yeah.
And that's the concern.
Okay.
And so what MnDOT said, they want a controlled intersection there, because of the concern for, you know, T-boning a semi, right, which would be awful. So with the speeds increasing, with all the other stoplights being pulled out, they just feel like that intersection needs to be controlled until some future solution comes along.
I was just looking at it on my map and figuring out what the driving force was.
You need to mention furniture and things, but they have 2 buildings that are being built over there, right?
Yeah, they've got some big plans for that area, and I'm glad that's come up, because I probably should have talked a little bit more about that, but so Plants and Things is moving out of Ramsey, as part of the next part of the highway project. So that'll all be here, and they're doing a much nicer facility, then an additional building, and then they have long-term plans, because they own, I can't remember how many acres, mostly to the north and slightly to the west of that facility, where they ultimately could do some, more distribution type facility there. So they're really becoming invested in that, part of town. They actually just, did a naming rights agreement as well with, what we call YAC, the Youth Athletic Complex. So that'll now be Plants and Things, Youth Athletic Complex.
I think Harvey just installed fiber in that area, right?
We've been working with them, yeah. I believe it's a showroom and a warehouse is what. The two brothers, so the one brother owns the furniture and things, and the other brother owns Plants and Things. So it's a family.
Yeah, right.
Jeff.
Yeah, owns the
Jeff
Plants and
owns
Things.
Plants and
Yeah,
Things,
yeah. Or, yeah.
Steve owns the. Yeah, they've been good to work with.
Yeah, they're excellent and community-focused individuals, so that's really cool.
Yeah, that's in that whole fiber. That was actually one of the reasons we started that whole fiber project there, because there were companies complaining there.
That was
They
one of the
didn't
other
have adequate.
projects down in that corner.
A lot of businesses didn't have adequate internet there, so.
Good.
One of the things we've been talking about a lot as an economic development group is workforce housing. Obviously, there's a lot of apartments going in, so that's going to open up a lot of potential housing there. I've been trying to do some reading on what other communities have tried to encourage more entry-level cost home ownership. And some communities have, I've seen some in Colorado, I read some in a couple other states, where they're looking at some of these tiny house developments, where they're very small lots, but it's still ownership. They're nice developments, so it's not like it's,
Crack housing.
yeah. I mean, well, it's not, they're nice, right? But it's a way to have a lower level entry point and have some ownership. Has the city looked at that at all yet? And that may not be the right question for you, but just if you happen to know.
I personally don't feel that we have looked at it that deeply. I know we talked in the comp plan about just those, I mean, we specifically referred to the missing middle, but just like any types of housing that we're missing in general that could meet some of the needs in the community, but I don't have a good answer on how we've looked at that.
You want to plug your housing summit? That's kind of a good fit into what you're doing.
You guys have more?
You know, if you'd like to, I can probably just, the last thing I was gonna mention is our main engaged property. It's the one that has been mentioned before, where the city took some substandard housing down, and it's part of that Main Street corridor that ultimately is probably better fit for commercial in the long run. So we have that under contract. That would be a 3-phase project. The first phase would be medical building. Second phase, another office building to be determined. And then the third phase would be dependent on acquiring an additional property that has not vacated the area yet. And so that would hold up anything in the long run. But I mentioned that one also because it's our understanding that there's some limbo happening with that project. So
Which project was it? I'm sorry.
the main gates, we had a medical office that wanted to build there, yeah. So 6,000-foot building. So we'll see if that gets off the ground or if we've got to revisit another project there.
Right over the railroad tracks.
Yeah,
Past the Legion.
Yes, past the Legion of the Chamber, yep. So, yeah, with that, I can do a full transition or call it good.
All right.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks for
You're
that,
welcome.
that's great.
Got 16 minutes.
Well, the reason why we put this on here, Ken, you had said a while ago, like, you know, it's okay to have a meeting where we just talk about the things that are going on and get some ideas out there. So that's where the strategic plan progress report and discussion came from. But before I get to that, I'm just gonna talk about the housing summit that we're working on. And I'll pass around our little flyers here, I'm gonna keep one. So this is a partnership, I would say, between Treadstone Mortgage and myself. And since the creation of this flyer, the Elk River Chamber has also been looped in as part of hosting this with us. So I know we talked about this being on November 8th. It's going to be 4.5 hours here at the Government Center, followed by a happy hour at Tipsy Chicken. We've got our agenda on the back, which I'm super excited about. Debbie's going to be our MC. We're going to have an economic update from King Banyan, followed by a Sherburne County update by myself, and then Mark is going to talk about the comp plan. We're going to have a legislative update from the Vice President of Legislative and Political Affairs for Housing First Minnesota. Eric Lucero is going to talk about his work on the Senate Housing Committee as a real estate broker and a building contractor. And then we have a panel discussion where we've got several questions that we're going to ask the panel and the audience, which is where we're hoping to get the majority of our information from. The questions that I submitted to be asked at the panel, there's 3 of them. I know, Mark, you were going to send me a couple questions, and then I'd be, if anyone else in this group has any specific questions you wanted us to talk about there, just send them my way. So the questions were, we know that there are state regulations that make development in Minnesota expensive. Is there anything a local government can do to help offset those costs? What tools and incentives do communities have that are attractive to developers? And what can Sherburne County do better to create an environment that will spur housing development? So those were my 3 questions. If anyone here at this table has any other questions you'd like to put before that panel, think about it tomorrow or a week from now or whatever, just go ahead and send those my way.
Can you send us the questions that you've already come up with?
Yep, send them out to the group, I can do that. So any questions, thoughts, ideas on our housing summit? How do you think it's shaping up and looking? And
Looks great.
Do you need help pushing this, or you've gotten
Yes.
this out to?
So we have to cap that event at, I think, 65 registrants, just because we have space requirements here at the Government Center. I don't think we're gonna have a problem at all getting 65 people to that event. So I would say register quickly. But yes, the people that we want in the room are gonna be our brokers, our developers, our lenders, anyone that's gonna be involved in getting housing built. That's who we want in there. So if you know any of those people, go ahead and pass off this invitation. I do know that this is likely gonna be the first of 2, if not 3 housing summits, because I know there are missing pieces in terms of housing here. It's just impossible to get everybody in one meeting. So I'm sure that there will be more that comes from this, which is the idea. We just want to keep this conversation going. So this is it so far.
As a follow-up to this, we will have our housing consultant come to our November EDA meeting. That's who did the study back in 2020, so then we can give him scope for the next project that we want to do, and we can talk to that process.
So that's it for the housing study. I do have I'll lead into that. So with the economic strategic plan, I just wanted to kind of go through, and I don't know if anyone's had time to read the comments. I've been using the strategic plan as kind of a working document to just kind of log the work that has been done in the sections lined out in the strategic plan, just so we know that this wasn't a document that was made and saved in a file and never looked at it again. So I don't know if anyone's had time to go through and look at the comments that were made in there. Chrissy, if you just want to kind of scroll, I'm just going to highlight a few of our accomplishments that we've done. And then if anybody knows of an event or a ribbon cutting or a new business or somebody that, we should be visiting with, always feel free to just send that contact information my way. You don't have to set up a meeting, you don't have to make the phone call. If you just send that my way, I'd be more than happy to reach out to those people. or any other thing that you think falls in a bucket of the strategic plan that we should be involved with, just continually send that information my way. So in terms of business retention and expansion, now this plan was just approved in July, so I think we've done a lot of good work since July. We've done 23 business retention and expansion visits. We set a lofty goal of 50 this year. Laura's been on some, Molly's been on some, Greta was on some. You came, right, to one? Yep, Ken. So we've had some good, Andy, we've had some good involvement from EDA going to those. And then there's been a lot of really good things that have come from those visits as well.
Question, Jessica?
Yep.
How does I don't recall seeing anything about when you do these visits.
So if they're in Big Lake, Therese has been setting up the ones in Big Lake. Do you get invites from Therese for those?
I don't see anything.
You don't see anything?
And this
Okay.
is a county EDA.
So, yep, so these are just the business retention and expansion visits that we've done in the county, whether they're set up by myself or any of the other economic and community
I think
developers.
everybody in this group should get notification when you're doing a visit.
Okay.
No matter where, and then they can choose what they want to, if they can participate or not.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. So I had begun doing, to kind of look at our competitiveness with other counties. I had begun looking at like a SWOT analysis between us, Washington, and Carver, just to kind of look at how we stack up. I would consider those two counties peers. I'm still completing that right now. It's a lot, but it'll be interesting to look at. So that is something that is being worked on. We are doing our County Connect meetings. We've been doing them monthly. Hopefully, I don't know if everyone here in this group is aware, but Renee Regal from the city of Becker has resigned her position as the economic development coordinator there. So they're actively looking for a replacement for her, so if you know any good candidates. But she was a really great participant in the County Connect meetings along with Brent and Josh, and we've had St. Cloud and Big Lake, and so those meetings might look a little bit different until they get someone in place as well too. So moving into workforce, the things that we've done in workforce, we do mock job interviews. I sign up and do those with the high school just to help prepare those younger kids for their first job interview. We participate in the apprenticeship and career fair day. I'm actually going to the Big Lake one when I'm done here. And I also sit on business and finance committee with the Elk River School District to help with their planning and stuff. Let's see here.
Have you heard how many attendants they're going to be having at that Big Lake? Because I know it's growing to be quite large from when it first started.
I don't know how many are going to be there, but I can certainly provide feedback afterwards. And
It was a full gym in the past. I can't imagine how.
yeah,
Well, from when it first started 5 or 6 years ago, and they had a very small handful to, I think last year was like over 90 some participants. So I just was wondering if that growth pattern is continuing.
okay, yeah. And I know like it starts at 9 o'clock this morning. So Jacob from our HR, Jacob Macy, he's got a table there all day. And so then and that's where Teresa's at right now too.
Are the other schools doing that as well in the county? Like Becker, Elk River?
They do their version.
Okay.
They do their versions of those. They may not be in the fall. Some of them do them in the spring. Yeah.
That's good, because it exposes our youth to different options.
Yeah, like Elk River does like a cool jobs tour where they go around, and then they also do college day, or not called college day, but where they take the kids to the tech colleges and stuff. So they do different things also. Let's see what else. There's some highlights as we go through here. Oh yeah, the ISD 728, if we're still looking in workforce goals, they are looking for job shadow opportunities, and this is common within other school districts too. They'll kind of put a feeler out throughout the year. So if you ever know of any job shadow opportunities, in your communities, let me know, because the school districts are always looking for things like that. I did talk about, I'm just kind of moving down the line, Chrissy, I think you're good. The business lab received a big update, so this would be in number 4 of workforce goals, for employee retention. So they received an upgrade, which we kind of talked about earlier, for all their tools that they have in there. And then moving down into housing, we talked about doing a housing study refresh. I'm kind of thinking that we should wait until after the housing summit to decide if we want to do an update or if it's necessary to do like the full comprehensive refresh. I'm trying to be fast, so if it seems like I'm rushing through, I kind of am. Again, in housing, along with an updated housing study, the utilization of financial incentives. We did a housing workshop with the county board on it says August 15th, it actually got bumped back to, I think, the 21st. And just some food for thought for the county commissioners on different tools and what housing could look like. And I think there will be follow-up to that as well. But economic development was one of the main presenters for that housing workshop. I talked about our housing summit. I also attend the Rum River Housing Coalition meetings, which is a Princeton group. Those are monthly meetings. What is this, townships to ED? Okay, so I do communicate with our townships very regularly, particularly with our County Connect meetings. So those are the monthly meetings that we have right after EDA, and all the townships in the county are included on that invite. They get the agenda, they get all the meeting notes. So even if they're not coming to the meetings, they're able to decide if the information in there is relevant and they want to come, or they can see what we've discussed, and if they have the opportunity to, or if they have the desire to ask for any additional information. Continuing down to work with planning and zoning on home size ordinance and other considerations. I know we were pretty involved with the comp plan and had feedback in that, and then also when the comp plan came out, did that go out to all of EDA, Mark, do you know?
It went out to some.
It went out to
some. What hat they have on.
Okay, so I did read a good portion of that document, and certainly everything pertaining to economic development, and provided feedback on behalf of the EDA, made sure that what was in that comp plan was a reflection of what we have in our strategic plan. So that was some work that we did in that area as well. Policy updates. Let's see.
And thank you, Mark, for letting us participate in that process. I hope that relationship strengthens.
That marriage between zoning and economic development is really clear. That needs to be there.
We had a goal in here to disseminate relevant information to cities and townships. I have presented on our EDA at the Becker EDA meetings, and then also I was just at a Princeton EDA meeting in August to just communicate what our participation is with the cities and make sure that they know of any incentives or tools that we have here, and that we're definitely willing to be at the table, with any conversation that they would have. Down in broadband, I have Dan updated on the 2023 broadband projects. So you did that
Yeah, we
at
did
the,
11 projects with our ARPA dollars that reached almost 1,500 people. One in Elk River, so businesses were included in that. And we're down to probably a 10% gap in Sherburne County, where we were at 40% a couple years ago, so we've come a long ways.
Wow, that's gotta be almost considered like full coverage at that point.
Well, we have a goal to be in the top, 5, so we still got a little ways to go to get there. That was an
Top
aggressive
5
goal.
counties.
What's that?
Top 5 counties.
Yeah. That's hard to compete with the Metro when they're at about.
That's what I was
97%.
that's what I was gonna say. Between Anoka and Hennepin, that's gonna be rough.
If you don't push for it, you're not gonna get there.
That's right, you gotta have aggressive goals.
So in the childcare section of our strategic plan, we've done, I feel like, made some pretty good strides towards getting some childcare within Sherburne County. A while ago, I facilitated a meeting with First Children's Finance and the city, because I was told by First Children's Finance that the program that they offer in terms of like analysis of your community to see what type of childcare would be adequate, all that kind of stuff, how much you need is Sherburne County is too big. That's really a city type initiative. So they did present at our County Connect. The city of Becker did apply to participate in their rural child care innovation program, and they were awarded that. So that's an exciting thing for the city of Becker that came directly from the work that we did here. And so that will be starting this fall, so that will be one of the projects that the incoming economic development coordinator for Becker will be picking up. And we will have involvement in that. I will sit on the core committee for that planning. And then I also participate in, there's the Child Care Advisory Fund meetings, and that's like a St. Cloud, Western, Sherburne County, that area. So that's the target focus of that advisory. And I am listening on those. As far as the federal economic development district designation, the work that's been done in there. So that is currently kind of sitting, I would say, with Don Hickman at the Initiative Foundation. He's working his connections between the counties to get everyone all on the same.
He's actually meeting with the counties over the next couple weeks where he's presenting to their county boards. So basically what we presented to the EDA a couple weeks ago, they're presenting to the other counties now.
Yep, so that is still moving forward. And then if we scoot down into transportation, I did apply for that Economic Recovery Corps Fellow. We did not get the Economic Recovery Corps Fellow, but we tried. So that was one way that we've done work in that section. And then I also am involved in the North Star Corridor community meetings. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the North Star is increasing their visits and their stops. So they have a brand new schedule, I think, for October. I'm pretty sure it starts, so that's exciting.
They're also doing event trains for the Vikings game starting tonight.
Yeah. And then down.
Look at that last thing you had, not the North Star, but the prior. Is that something you can apply for annually for that fellow? Or is that just like, it was a one-time?
I don't know. I can look.
Okay.
I know that specific application period closed, so whether they open it up for 24, but I'm sure I'd get an email about it because I'm now on their list. So, and then moving down into marketing, there's a lot of different things that we do in marketing. I've been working a lot just on the economic development section of our webpage. So there was a lot of outdated information. Dave Unzi, who's our communications director, I don't know his official title, but I'm sure whenever he sees my email come across, he's probably like, oh my gosh, what does she need me to update now? But he just updated, I had an 8-page Word document of updates for our EDA section, and he got all that in there, and then Sherburne County overall is doing some changes with their website, so our section will look a lot different, and I'm really excited about that. There'll be some good, fresh content in there. In addition to that, we renewed our partnership with the SBDC. So starting in October, they're going to be coming here for the offering consultations to businesses. I have a flyer here. I don't know if you guys are interested in sharing them at your business, but you never know who you know is looking to start a business. But there's a QR code on there. We've implemented quite a few QR codes for economic development, for the SBDC, for our housing study. So we're really trying to make attending our events or accessing the information that we have easy, super easy for people. So that's one thing that we've been working on. We just attended the St. Cloud Development Summit on Friday. Dan was there. I put a feeler out to all of our economic and community developers. So Sherburne County had a table there, and then we brought the city of Elk River, shared some of their land flyers. The city of Princeton shared some of their land flyers. Becker. I did ask Big Lake, but she's so busy. You guys got so much going on there. So whoever wanted flyers at our table there had flyers at our table there. So that was kind of a fun thing that we got to do. And I won't go through all the marketing things. That's really a big part of the work that we do. But really participating too with the chambers. I do a lot with all of the chambers in the county, whether it's presenting at the chamber events. I attend all the ribbon cuttings and things like that. So that's something that I think we find a lot of value in the businesses due to. A lot of times I'll get a thank you email that comes after that. Like, it's really nice to know that the county has an interest in our small business. I just got one of those last week, so actually it was this week. So again, I would just want to open up, I know we're over time, but if there's any work in here that you see an opportunity that you'd like us to do more on, just let me know.
No, I think it's pretty amazing what's been done here, just a really short amount of time. I'm really excited about the housing summit. Get some ongoing talks. You've got some quality sponsors there, people that are definitely committed into Sherburne County. So, from my viewpoint, excellent. Anything else?
I did notice the next meeting, that's actually the 19th, the 18th is a Wednesday.
Oh. Thank you.
Jared, you got any update on your project?
Yeah, we're actually in what we call like our phase one charter process as well too. So getting ready to essentially submit our business case for our next expansion facility. So
More to come?
yeah, we're done, but moving as quickly as we can, which is tough when you're a little bit bigger. Not quite as agile as we'd like to be.
All right, well, Brett and Josh, thanks for your participation today. Mark, as always, if there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.